I need you to listen to this carefully, because the moment my son turned to me wide-eyed and said, Daddy, I used to live here, I felt something cold crawl down my spine. Not fear exactly, but a shift, like the world had tilted just slightly out of place. And we had just moved in. First night, boxes still taped shut, keys barely warm from the realtor's hand. But my 5-year-old said it with certainty, like a memory resurfacing, not like a joke or some wild kid story. And from that moment on, nothing in this house felt right again. Now, I know how this sounds. I do. Kids say weird stuff all the time, right? Imaginary friends, monsters in closets, past lives. It's easy to brush off. But this was different. And I'll tell you how I know. Because what started as an innocent comment turned into something so twisted, so bone-deep wrong, it forced me to question everything I thought I knew about reality. So if you're watching this right now because that title caught your eye, stay with me. I promise you, you are going to get the answer you came for. But I need you to hear everything. Because this isn't just about my son. It's not even just about this house. It's about memory, time loss, and the things that live between those cracks. Hey. Yeah, you watching this right now, probably late at night with your phone a little too close to your face, earbuds and lights off, just hoping for something creepy enough to scratch that itch. Maybe you've seen 100 of these videos before. But I want to tell you, this one is real. This isn't some recycled urban legend or scripted ghost tale. This is personal. And I need you to walk through this with me. Because once you start seeing what I saw, once you hear the things I heard, you're not going to forget it. And maybe that's the whole point. Maybe someone wanted me to share this. We moved from Colorado to a small town in upstate New York. One of those sleepy places with postcard-perfect fall leaves, old picket fences, and houses that feel like they've been around since America was born. We'd had a rough couple of years. My wife lost her mom. I got laid off. We needed a fresh start. Somewhere slower. Somewhere cheaper. Somewhere quiet. And then this listing popped up online like a gift from nowhere. Huge yard, wraparound porch, vintage 1920s architecture, and a price tag that almost felt like a scam. It had been on the market for months. No buyers. No offers. The realtor said, honestly, I'm shocked no one's jumped on this. He chalked it up to the economy. But I should have known better. You always pay for a house. If not in cash, then in something else. The day we moved in, everything seemed fine. Bright even. My wife, Erin, was already planning where the Christmas tree would go. I was dragging furniture through the door, making dad jokes about needing a chiropractor. Our son, Caleb, was chasing our dog around the living room, shouting something about how much he loved the stairs. Was good. A fresh start. Until Caleb stopped dead on the landing, turned to face me and said it, his little voice too calm, too matter-of-fact. I used to live here. Before you did. I laughed at first. I thought maybe he'd overheard us talking about the previous owners, or maybe he'd watched something weird on YouTube Kids again. Those algorithmic rabbit holes can do strange things to little minds. But when I asked him what he meant, he just stared off at the upstairs hallway and said, my room was the one with the blue stars. They're still there under the paint. Now let me just say, there is no way he could have known that. We hadn't been upstairs with him. We hadn't even been inside for more than an hour. But the next day, when I peeled back a section of that freshly painted wall in the second bedroom, sure enough, hidden beneath a layer of eggshell white, were faded glow-in-the-dark stars. Tiny, blue, peeling stickers from some child's long-gone bedtime ceiling. Caleb smiled when he saw them. Not surprised. Remembering. At first, we thought maybe it was just a weird coincidence. That maybe the previous owners had kids and Caleb was just picking up on kid energy, or whatever new age term fit the mood. But then the dream started. Caleb would wake up screaming. Not crying, not whining, screaming, blood-curdling middle-of-the-night howls that chilled every part of our bones. He'd say things like, he's in the wall again, or don't let him under the bed this time. Erin kept trying to talk it through with him, but he wouldn't explain. Not really. Just kept repeating strange phrases like mantras, the closet knows, or I died on the stairs. That one hit us both hard. I mean, what kind of 5-year-old says that? We tried not to panic. We took him to a therapist. We thought maybe it was stress from the move. Maybe even undiagnosed night terrors. But nothing helped. The therapist said his drawings were too sophisticated for his age. Not in talent, just in content. One picture showed a figure with no face holding hands with a smaller child standing in front of a house that looked disturbingly like ours. Another showed a stairwell with a stick-figure child lying at the bottom in red crayon. Next to it, the words it wasn't my fault. Asterisk. Now, I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but I need you to feel what we felt. The slow descent from confusion to dread. The way normal life starts to erode when something around you refuses to stay buried. We kept trying to explain things away, to stay grounded. But how do you do that when your kid starts reciting the names of people who used to live there before the internet even existed? How do you ignore it when he leads you to a crawlspace you didn't know was there, and inside it you find a child's shoe, a wooden toy, and a brittle old photograph of a boy who looks exactly like Caleb? Yes, exactly like him. At that point we stopped sleeping well. The lights in the hallway flickered every night at 3:12 a.m. like clockwork. Doors opened by themselves. The dog wouldn't go near the upstairs landing. And Caleb, he started referring to someone as asterisk, the other me. Asterisk, he'd say things like, he wants me to remember, or asterisk, he says I broke the promise. Asterisk, Aaron started losing weight. I started seeing things in the corners of mirrors. This house, it wasn't just haunted. It was unfinished. Like something inside it was stuck mid-story, waiting for someone to come back, to finish what was started. And listen, I don't expect you to believe me. Not right away. But what if I told you that after digging through town records, I found out a boy named Jacob Matthews lived in our house in 1977? That he died after falling down the staircase, the exact one Caleb kept talking about? That his body was found alone, his mother claiming she'd just gone to get the laundry, and that there were whispers in the local paper about something being off. Something no one could prove? What if I told you Caleb started answering to the name Jacob in his sleep? You're still here, aren't you? Still watching. Because now you're just like us, curious, unsettled, needing to know. And that's good. Because I'm about to show you something I've never shown anyone before. The footage. The recordings. The message Caleb left me last night in a voice that wasn't his own. You're going to see it all. Because the story doesn't end with Caleb's memory. It begins there. And the next part? The next part is where everything turns. Because last night he looked me dead in the eye and said, asterisk, Daddy, he's coming up the stairs again. Asterisk. And this time he knows your name too. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Not in the normal sense. I laid there, stiff on my side of the bed, watching the hallway from the crack in our bedroom door like some forgotten security guard in his last hour on shift. Erin, beside me, didn't even pretend to be asleep. Her eyes were open, fixed on the ceiling, blinking every few seconds like she was trying to wake herself from something she couldn't shake. She'd heard him too. Caleb's voice. Except it wasn't quite his voice. There was a texture in it, a rasp, a maturity, something older than a kindergartner should have been capable of channeling. When he said, he's coming up the stairs again, he wasn't asking for comfort. He wasn't scared. He was warning us. And that tone, it's been burned into me ever since. We hadn't even been in this town for a full month when things started to feel off. It was all supposed to be so different. The kind of quiet, close-knit community you only see in Hallmark movies. Erin had already signed up for a local pottery class, trying to stay grounded after her mother's death. Caleb was enrolled in a small private school just a few blocks from the house, where teachers still used chalkboards and knew every child by name. And me? I was freelancing now, working from home. Mostly tech gigs, remote systems admin work, web dev contracts here and there. But lately I'd started digging into something else entirely, local history, property records, death certificates, missing persons. It started casually at first, but I couldn't help myself. It was like this town wanted its stories to be found so long as no one looked too hard. That's when I met Mrs. Langford. She was our neighbor 3 doors down, maybe mid-80s, white hair, sharp eyes, the kind of woman who could make you feel like a little boy again just by asking how your manners were holding up. She came by with a pie the second week we moved in, blueberries slightly burnt at the edges, and stood on our porch like she was checking to see if we deserved to live there. She asked questions in the same tone Caleb's kindergarten teacher used, friendly but with a dose of suspicion. You have a little boy, don't you? 5, maybe 6. I nodded. She didn't smile. Just glanced over my shoulder into the house, like she was looking for someone else entirely. He looks like the one who used to live there, she finally said, and that was the beginning of the unease. Not just because of what she said but how she said it, like he was still around. Still watching. Erin didn't want to hear it. She thought it was all stress. Mine, Caleb's, hers, everyone's. The kind of collective pressure cooker people land in when they've been through enough trauma to make them snap at shadows. She started saying things like, we need to just focus on settling in, or, maybe you should stop Googling every creak in the floor. And to be honest, I wanted her to be right. I didn't want to believe our son was remembering a life he'd never lived. I didn't want to believe something old, unfinished, and angry had followed us here. But every time I tried to write it off, something else happened. The old woman came back a few days later, uninvited, holding a yellowed newspaper clipping in a Ziploc bag. No small talk this time. Just handed it to me like a package bomb and said, "Thought you should see this before he remembers too much." Then she walked away, her shoes crunching against our gravel path like gunfire. I didn't open the bag right away. Part of me was afraid. But when I finally did, it was a copy of an obituary from 1977. Asterisk Jacob Aaron Matthews, age 6, died tragically after a fall in his family's home, survived by his mother Lorraine Matthews. Father unknown. Asterisk the photo in the corner was grainy, but there was no denying it. That boy looked exactly like Caleb. Same eyes. Same cowlick. Same quiet, watchful stare. That night, Caleb asked me if he could sleep on the floor. When I asked why, he whispered, "The bed creaks when he crawls under it." My heart dropped, but I tried to smile through it. "Who's he?" I asked. Caleb just shook his head and said, "He doesn't like being seen. But he watches when the lights go off." I didn't have a response. Erin, who was brushing her teeth in the hallway, dropped her toothbrush into the sink with a loud clatter. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. And then, the voices started. Not loud. Not clear. Just whispers. Faint enough that you couldn't be sure if you really heard them. Late at night, when I was up working, I'd hear soft murmurs from the vents. They always came around 3 a.m., right before the hallway lights flickered. I even recorded them on my phone once, thinking maybe it was a prank, maybe the house had some weird old pipes or some radio interference. But when I played the audio back, there was a child's voice under it. Not Caleb's. Higher pitched. Echoed. And it said a name over and over again. Asterisk, Lorraine. Asterisk that was Jacob's mother's name. The woman from the obituary. I brought it up to Erin the next day, hoping to finally convince her. But she snapped. Said she couldn't take it anymore. Said she was tired, she was grieving, and now I was dragging her into some psychological horror story just to cope with being broke and overwhelmed. I get it. She didn't want to lose control. But she also didn't see what I saw later that week, when Caleb wandered out to the backyard and stood motionless in front of the swing set for 20 minutes. When I finally called his name, he turned and asked, "Where's the rope?" I asked what rope he meant, and he answered with this hollow voice that wasn't his. Asterisk, the one Mommy used when she thought I was sleeping. Asterisk, we never had a rope. But a search through the county's cold case archives, yes, I got desperate enough to go that far, revealed that Lorraine Matthews had vanished a year after Jacob's death. The case was closed as a presumed suicide. But no body was ever found. No note. Just one item left behind on the porch. A child's blanket with initials stitched in blue thread. Jim. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. That this could all be one big coincidence. A case of a sensitive child picking up residual energy, or maybe just a father on the edge unraveling from too much stress. That would be easier. Safer. I wish that were true. But here's where things start getting even stranger. Erin's pottery instructor, Miss Gracie, struck up a conversation with her one evening after class, completely out of the blue. She said something like, "You're living in the old Matthews house, right? You should come to one of our Preservation Society meetings. You might find it interesting." When Erin asked why, Gracie just said, "Some stories don't like being forgotten." That phrase haunted me. And it wasn't long after that we found the name, Jacob, carved faintly into the underside of Caleb's bed frame. Not scratched in. Etched, deliberate and deep like it had been there for decades. The bed was brand new. Bought it the week we moved in. And still, that name in a child's shaky lettering was there. I didn't tell Erin right away. I didn't want to scare her. But later that night, I saw her crying in the bathroom, clutching Caleb's baby photo to her chest and whispering, "That's not just him anymore. We're trying to keep it together. We really are. But the cracks are showing." Caleb stopped eating his lunches. Keeps saying he doesn't need food here. He barely sleeps. And when he does sleep, he speaks in his dreams, full conversations, sometimes even arguments. One night I caught him whispering, "I didn't push. I swear I didn't push. He just fell." I recorded that one too. The detective in me, the skeptical, logic-loving side, is still grasping for a solution. Maybe a gas leak. Maybe carbon monoxide. Maybe mass hysteria. But no physical tests show anything. The HVAC is clean. The carbon detectors? Silent. And now, every time I sit in my office, I hear that floorboard creak just outside the door, the same one Caleb says Jacob fell through. Something in this house is alive. Not in the way living things are, but in the way memories are. And maybe, just maybe, someone doesn't want us here. Or worse, maybe they do. But what happened last night? That changed everything. And I need you to be ready for it. Because when I tell you what we found in the crawl space, and who left it there, it's going to shake everything you believe about what's real, and what's waiting in the walls to be remembered again. I thought I was getting closer. I really did. There was this moment, maybe a single day, where it all felt like it was about to break open. I had a whiteboard in my office filled with names, dates, floor plans of the house through different decades. I'd cross-referenced police reports, old utility bills, even obscure town newsletters from the 70s that mentioned the Matthews family in passing, church donations, a bake sale Lorraine chaired, things like that. It felt like I was finally pulling the threads of this mystery into something solid. But right when I thought I had something real, something that could prove what was happening in this house, everything started to disappear. I don't mean metaphorically. I mean literally. Gone. The obituary Mrs. Langford gave me? Vanished. I kept it in a locked file box in the bottom drawer of my desk. One day it was there. The next, the box was empty. No break-in. No mess. Nothing else missing. Just gone. The recordings I made of Caleb talking in his sleep? The ones with the whispers and names? Every file on my phone corrupted. Every single one. Just static now. Not even white noise, something worse. Glitchy, high-pitched audio that makes your ears ring and your heart race. I showed one to Erin, and she physically recoiled like she'd touched a live wire. She told me to stop recording, stop digging, stop whatever obsession I'd built in my head. But I couldn't. And now I was starting to wonder if maybe someone else didn't want me to either. Because I wasn't the only one asking questions. I went back to Mrs. Langford to ask more about the Matthews family, hoping maybe she remembered something else. She didn't answer the door. I went back again the next day. Still nothing. By the third day her mailbox was overflowing, and her porch light stayed on during the day. A neighbor across the street, a retired guy named Frank, said he hadn't seen her since last Sunday. Just gone. No goodbye. No note. No trace. And I swear I had this sick, twisting thought right then that maybe just talking to me had put her in danger. So I started going to the town archive building myself. A dusty little records office crammed behind the public library where everything is still kept in manila folders and handwritten logbooks. I spent hours in there, flipping through property transfer documents, code violation records, anything that might give me a lead. That's when I met Susan. She was one of the archivists, maybe late 30s, dark red hair tied back, a no-nonsense tone, but sharp eyes, too sharp, like she'd already decided I was going to be trouble the second I walked in. I told her I was researching the history of our house for a creative project, trying not to sound like the crazy guy who thinks his kid is haunted. She watched me closely and said, "You're not the first new homeowner to come here asking about that place." When I asked what she meant, she just walked away and didn't come back. An hour later, she returned and slipped a single document onto my table. No folder, no explanation. Just a weathered incident report dated April 18, 1977. It referenced a domestic disturbance at our address, one day before Jacob's fall. The officer who filed it noted yelling, a possible altercation, and this was the part that stopped me cold, the statement. No father listed on record, but unknown male seen leaving the residence in a gray Dodge truck around 2:20 a.m. That wasn't mentioned in any of the newspaper clippings. Not in the obituary. Not in the death report. Made me wonder, who was that man? When I looked up to ask Susan more, she was gone. Not just from the records room, but from the building entirely. One of the other clerks said she'd clocked out early. I walked out to the parking lot and saw her car still there, engine still warm. That same creeping feeling returned, the one I was getting too used to, like someone was trying to erase every trace of the truth just seconds after I touched it. That night I couldn't let it go. I stayed up late scrolling through local missing persons reports, trying to find anything about Lorraine Matthews after she disappeared. I found a cryptic article from 1981 in a small regional paper. It didn't mention her by name, but it reported that a woman's body was discovered in a ravine 15 miles out of town, badly decomposed and never identified. What caught my eye was that she had the initials M stitched into the hem of her blouse. But just as I bookmarked the article, the screen went black. My laptop shut itself down. Wouldn't turn back on. I checked the battery. Plugged it in. Nothing. It was as if something inside it had just given up. The next morning I went to check on Caleb, and that's when I found something that made everything else feel small. There was writing on the wall above his bed. Scratched into the plaster, not drawn with a marker or crayon. The words were uneven, childlike, but not Caleb's handwriting. Asterisk, I remember now. He lied. Asterisk. I asked Caleb who wrote it and he wouldn't answer. Just stared at the corner of the room. When I pressed him gently, he finally whispered, "He said if I tell you, you'll be next." I took him out of school that day. I didn't know what else to do. Erin was furious. She started distancing herself completely from all of this. Thinks I'm unraveling, dragging Caleb down with me. But then I found something in her desk drawer. A journal. Pages written in her handwriting that she never showed me. And tucked between the pages was an old photo I'd never seen before. Caleb at maybe age 2 standing in front of what looked like a swing set. But it wasn't our backyard. It was this backyard. This exact house. Same shed. Same tree. Same crooked fence. Except we hadn't even heard of this town until this year. I took the photo to Erin. She denied everything at first, said she didn't know where it came from, that maybe it was from a dream, or maybe she'd picked it up at a thrift shop and forgot about it. But her hands were shaking. Her voice was thin. I kept pushing until finally she snapped. "Because I have seen this house before," she admitted, eyes wide with guilt. "Years ago. When my mother was still alive. She brought me here once. I don't remember why. She said it was just for the day. But I never forgot that tree." And just like that, everything shifted. This wasn't just some haunted house mystery anymore. This wasn't just about Jacob or Caleb or even Lorraine. Erin's family was somehow tied to this place too. And now it made me wonder, what if we didn't find this house by accident? What if this house found us? Before I could ask more, the lights flickered again. The power snapped off. And from upstairs, we both heard the unmistakable creak of Caleb's door swinging open, followed by the soft, dragging sound of footsteps across the floor. But when we ran up to his room, it was empty. And the window was open. We tore through that room like lunatics, shouting Caleb's name into every dark corner as if our voices alone could pull him back. The bed was still warm. His blanket lay twisted at the foot of it like he'd kicked it off in a hurry or maybe in fear. The window, the one that had been painted shut since we moved in, was now wide open, the bottom sash raised cleanly, no chipping paint, no resistance. It didn't even make sense. A child couldn't have opened it. Not from inside. Not without help. I stuck my head out and looked down into the backyard. Nothing. No footprints in the flower bed below. No movement in the trees. Just wind whispering through the branches like it knew we were too late. Erin was already on the phone with the police, her voice shaking as she tried to give our address through sobs. I didn't wait for them. I grabbed a flashlight and bolted out the back door, shouting Caleb's name into the night like a man who already knew he wouldn't get an answer. We found him 2 hours later. He was standing barefoot on the back porch of the neighbor's house across the street, Frank's place. Frank was gone that night, out visiting his daughter in Rochester, but Caleb had somehow made it onto his porch swing and sat there like he'd been waiting for us. His feet were dirty, his pajamas soaked through with dew, but his face was calm, eerily calm. When I scooped him up and asked what happened, he didn't speak. Just laid his head on my shoulder and whispered, "He didn't want me to go far. He said I'll see more next time." We didn't sleep again. The cops were polite but useless. Said maybe Caleb sleepwalked. Said it was common in kids. That it probably wasn't the window, that maybe we left the back door unlocked. No signs of a break-in. No forced entry. No real concern. Just clipped notes and a report and a flashlight sweep that did nothing but make the house feel smaller. And colder. But something changed after that night. Caleb stopped drawing. Stopped speaking to us unless he had to. His teacher said he barely reacted in class, like he was going through the motions of being a child without really being there. But what scared me more was that he was always listening. To everything. Conversations between me and Erin. Podcasts I played in the background. Whispered phone calls I made to the town's preservation office. It was like he was absorbing everything around him, cataloging it for someone else. And then the package arrived. No return address. No postage stamp. Just a plain manila envelope left on our porch one morning, wedged between a planter and the railing. Inside was a VHS tape. Just that. No note. No writing. The tape was labeled in black marker. Asterisk, 1977, birthday. Asterisk, I didn't even own a VHS player anymore, but Frank did. When he got back the following evening, I asked to borrow it. He hesitated, said he didn't want to get involved, that he'd heard things about the house over the years but didn't believe in all that ghost talk. Then, just as I was leaving, he said something that stuck with me. Asterisk, whatever's got its claws in you? It's older than that house. Asterisk. Back home, I connected the VHS player to our spare TV and pressed play. The footage was grainy, washed in that faded color tone that only tapes from the 70s and 80s seemed to have. The video showed a small birthday party, kids in paper hats, a cake with blue frosting, a woman who looked like a younger version of Lorraine Matthews standing behind a boy who could only be Jacob. And then, about halfway through the tape, something changed. The camera started shaking slightly like the person filming was nervous. The frame tilted downward to show the boy opening presents on the living room rug. **Our living room rug. Same floorboards. Same fireplace. Caleb's room was directly above that spot. Then, in the corner of the screen, a man entered the frame. Tall, wearing a gray flannel coat. His face wasn't shown, either by accident or design. But the moment he stepped into the shot, Jacob turned to him and said, "You said it would stop." The man didn't answer. Just placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, and the tape cut to static. I sat there, frozen, trying to process what I'd just seen. It was the same man from the incident report, the one seen leaving the house the night before Jacob's death. The one no one could identify. But what if that man wasn't just a one-time visitor? What if he had something to do with the events that followed? The static at the end of the tape wasn't ordinary either. It pulsed in and out as if the footage had been corrupted, but underneath the distortion I could swear I heard something. A voice, layered and warped, whispering, "Back again. Always back again." Erin didn't want to see it. She begged me to destroy the tape, to stop inviting whatever this was further into our lives. But before I could decide, we got a call, from my sister, Beth, down in Maryland. She sounded rattled, more anxious than I'd ever heard her. She said Caleb had left her a voicemail. But Caleb hadn't called her. We had his phone on lockdown, no apps, no contacts beyond immediate family. And yet the voicemail was real. She played it for me on speaker. It was Caleb's voice, no doubt about it. But the words he said made my chest tighten. Auntie Beth, don't come here. He remembers you too. He said you're the one who told him about the box. He said it wasn't your secret to tell. Beth was silent on the other end of the line. I didn't understand what any of it meant. I asked if she knew about any box, about what Caleb was referring to. And slowly, like every word tasted bitter, she admitted something I never expected. Years ago, when we were kids, our father used to take us on long drives to old towns, places he claimed were full of story. Once he took us to upstate New York. We stopped at a gas station where he talked for half an hour to a woman named Lorraine. Beth remembered because she found a wooden box buried behind the building while playing in the weeds. Inside were Polaroids. Old ones. Of children. One looked just like Caleb. She never told anyone. Our dad made her put it back. Said it wasn't theirs to take. And that's when I realized, this thing, whatever it is, didn't start with Caleb. Or Jacob. Or even this house. It's bigger than that. Older. It's been circling our family for decades, maybe generations, waiting for someone to move the wrong piece on the board. But before I could ask Beth anything more, the call dropped. I tried to call back. No answer. Just static. That night, I went back to the crawlspace where Caleb had once led me. I crawled deeper this time, flashlight clenched in my fist, heart pounding with every inch. And at the far end, I found something I hadn't seen before, buried beneath an old beam wrapped in fabric. It was a small wooden box. But just as I reached for it, I heard someone breathing behind me. And I was alone. At first I didn't move. I couldn't. I just stayed crouched in that crawlspace with my hand outstretched toward the wooden box, heart thudding so loud in my ears it drowned out the silence. But it wasn't truly silent anymore, was it? The breathing was slow, deliberate, rhythmic. Not mine. Not Caleb's. Not possible. It was behind me, low and close, so close I could feel the breath brush the back of my neck. Impossibly cold, like it had traveled through the walls. And then, just as suddenly as it came, it stopped. A crushing stillness returned, the kind that presses into your chest and makes it hard to think straight. I turned around, body trembling in every joint, and there was nothing there. No figure. No movement. Just cobwebs and dust and the hum of the old furnace kicking on in the far corner. But I know what I felt. That wasn't imagination. That wasn't a draft. That was deliberate. Something was in there with me. And it let me know. I grabbed the box and crawled out fast, knees scraping against the cement, lungs burning, head spinning. I didn't even open it right away. I just held it in my lap, sitting on the floor of my office with the door shut and locked, listening for every groan the house made, every flicker of movement upstairs. Erin had taken Caleb to her sister's place for the night after he woke up screaming again, this time with scratch marks across his chest that neither of us could explain. She didn't say it, but I knew she didn't plan on coming back anytime soon. Maybe not at all. And honestly, I couldn't blame her. Every day we stayed in this place, it got darker, not just in atmosphere but in some unspoken pull. Like the house didn't want us to leave, like it was feeding on the confusion and silence that had started to consume us. When I finally got the courage to open the box, I expected more Polaroids, more weird clues. But what I found made my blood turn to ice. Inside were newspaper clippings, yellowed and brittle, each folded carefully and arranged by year. The earliest dated back to 1952. A fire. A child lost in the basement of a farmhouse that once stood right on this property. No body ever recovered. Next article, 1963. Another child, age 7, goes missing during a game of hide and seek. Home address listed as ours. Then 1977. Jacob. Then 1988. 2003, 2016. Every 10 to 15 years. Every single one involving a child. Every single one connected to this house. But the most recent clipping wasn't from a newspaper. It was an email printout, just a few months old. A real estate agent in town replying to a vague inquiry. Subject line, asterisk, Matthew's property, status. Asterisk, the message was brief, off-market, but I can make arrangements. Just say the word. You know how these things work. It was addressed to Erin. My hands went numb. I stared at her name, the email header, the timestamp. She knew, before we ever moved. Before she ever saw the listing. She knew this house, knew something about it, maybe more than she ever let on. And she still brought us here. What? I confronted her the next morning. Drove straight to her sister's and waited until she came outside to smoke one of the menthols she only touched when she was spiraling. I showed her the email. Asked her straight up, asterisk, what do you know about this house? Asterisk, at first she denied it. Then she tried to gaslight me, said I must have fabricated it in my paranoia, that maybe I was too far gone to see clearly. But the panic in her eyes said otherwise. And finally she broke. She told me she remembered the house from childhood. Not just the yard but the rooms, the sound of the stairs, the smell of the basement. Her mother had brought her here often. Not just once. She used to visit someone, Erin said, voice flat like she was repeating a story she didn't want to hear again. A man. I don't know his name. She said he was family but I never saw his face. She always made me wait in the car. I asked her what else. She hesitated. Then said, I think he lived under the house. I couldn't speak. My whole body locked up. She swore she didn't remember much. Only fragments, flashes of feeling, images from when she was 5 or 6. But then she looked me in the eye and said something that nearly stopped my heart. Asterisk, that's not the first photo I've seen of Caleb in this house. That's just the first one I gave you. Asterisk. Before I could press her, her phone buzzed. She answered and immediately froze, then handed it to me without speaking. It was my neighbor, Frank. His voice on the line was different. Cold, clipped, with a shaky tension underneath. You need to come back, he said. Now. There's a man in your house. He's standing in the upstairs window. And he's been staring at me for over an hour. I rushed home, engine screaming, tires screeching down that gravel drive. The street was quiet. Frank's blinds were drawn. My porch looked the same as I'd left it, undisturbed. But when I looked up toward Caleb's window, I saw it. The shape. A silhouette behind the glass. So, not moving. Just there, watching. I ran inside, bolted up the stairs 2 at a time. But the room was empty. No footprints. No open closets. Nothing out of place. Except one thing. The box was gone. I stood there in that room, staring at the empty space where the box had been, where those articles had sat like an ancient warning, and I felt a new kind of dread settle into my bones. Not fear of death, but fear of truth. Something was orchestrating all of this. Someone, or something, was pulling every string. And now it had taken the evidence. Taken Caleb's voice. Taken Erin's trust. Piece by piece, it was stripping me of every tool I had left to fight back. But that wasn't the end of it. Later that night I got a text. No number. No contact. Just a single image, a photo of me standing in the crawlspace, reaching for the box. Taken from behind. Someone had been there, with me. And they wanted me to know. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I just sat at the kitchen table with every light in the house on, staring at the photo that had been texted to me, my own back hunched inside the crawlspace, frozen mid-reach toward a truth I barely understood. Someone had been standing right there, close enough to touch me. Watching. Recording. But how had they gotten in? And more terrifying, how long had they been watching before that moment? The front door was locked. The windows sealed. Security cams hadn't picked up a thing. That's when it hit me. I never checked the attic. I climbed the pull-down ladder at dawn, flashlight in one hand, crowbar in the other. The attic was dusty and choked with insulation, cluttered with broken furniture and old crates left behind by previous owners, or maybe planted by someone who wanted them found. Toward the back, near the vent that faced Caleb's room, I found a pile of cigarette butts, a sleeping bag rolled into the shadows, and a small handheld camcorder with a dead battery. Someone had been living up there, watching us, filming us, probably for weeks. I took the camera to my office and plugged it in. As soon as it powered on, I opened the video library, expecting to find grainy night vision or shaky footage of us sleeping. Instead, I found something far worse. There were clips, dozens, sorted by date. Footage of Caleb playing in his room, Aaron pacing the kitchen, me working in the garage. But the most recent file wasn't of our house. It was of someone else entirely. It was Frank. The video showed him sitting in his dark living room, talking to the camera like it was a diary. His voice was frantic, desperate. "They think it's the house," he said, trembling. "They always think it's the house. But it's her, it's always been her. She brings them back. Every time. Every cycle. Every new family." He reached forward and picked up a Polaroid, familiar. One of the ones I'd found in the crawlspace. "They think these are clues," he said, almost laughing. "But they're just trophies. She makes them. Leaves them. For herself. For the next round. Like breadcrumbs in her own little fairy tale." My throat dried instantly. I rewound the tape to a timestamp I'd missed. The date on the clip wasn't from this week. It was from 4 months ago, before we ever moved in. And yet, there he was mentioning the new family. Us. Before we even set foot in that house. That's when my phone rang. It was Frank. I didn't answer at first. I just let it ring while I stared at the paused image of his face. But then the voicemail came through. Just 5 words, asterisk, "Get out. She knows now." Asterisk. I called Aaron. It rang once. Then voicemail. I called again. And again. Finally, on the 5th try, she answered, but the voice on the other end wasn't hers. It was Caleb. Crying. "She's mad," he whispered. "Mommy's mad. She said you lied." I bolted out of the house and drove straight to her sister's place, heart pounding, headlights cutting through the morning fog like blades. But when I got there, the driveway was empty. The house was dark. I banged on the door until my knuckles bled. No answer. I ran around back and looked through the sliding glass window. Empty. No signs of a struggle. No overturned furniture. Just gone. I called the police. Reported them missing. But before the officer even arrived, my phone lit up again. A new text. This time not a photo, but a video. It opened to show a familiar basement. Ours. But not as it looks now. This version was older, grittier, and scattered with children's toys and faded wallpaper of stars and moons. The camera panned slowly, deliberately, until it rested on a small bed frame tucked in the corner. And on it sat a little girl. Silent. Eyes blank. Face familiar. It was Aaron. The video cut abruptly. And then came the real twist, the one that made my knees give out. There was audio at the end. Faint. Warped. Like a voice recorded underwater. Asterisk, "You promised to keep me hidden." Asterisk. I played it back again and again, trying to decipher the tone, the words, the intent. But no matter how many times I listened, it all pointed to one impossible truth. Aaron hadn't just visited that house as a child. She'd lived there. She'd been kept there. And someone had tried to erase all trace of that past. Everything we'd experienced wasn't some haunting by a stranger or a serial pattern of tragedy tied to the home. It was something far more deliberate. Someone had been trying to pull Aaron back. Like the house wasn't cursed, it was unfinished. Like whatever lived in those walls didn't want to harm us. Not yet. It just wanted her back. And here's what still makes my stomach turn. I checked the house records again. Ownership history. Deeds. Names scratched out. But one name appeared years ago, tied to a trust, then removed, then replaced like someone didn't want it to be found. Aaron Matthews, at age 8. The original owner. Of the house we thought we'd just moved into. And now, she's the one who's missing. I drove in circles for hours that morning, my fingers trembling against the wheel as I kept refreshing my phone for updates that never came. No new texts, no location ping, no police callback. Just silence. A silence that felt personal, like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do next. Every theory I had about ghosts or trespassers or generational trauma suddenly felt naive. This wasn't random. This wasn't even paranormal. This was orchestrated, and Aaron, my wife, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, was at the center of it. The house wasn't stalking us. It was pulling her back in. And now, somehow she was gone. Our son was terrified, and I was the only one still pretending like I had control. But that illusion shattered the moment someone knocked on my passenger window. It was Frank. Not disheveled, not frantic, calm. Too calm. He slid into the passenger seat without asking and shut the door like he'd been expected. "I told you," he said, eyes straight ahead. "You should have left when she screamed the first time. That was your chance." I stared at him, waiting for a crack in his tone, a sign he was joking. But nothing came. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "What the hell is going on?" He turned to me slowly, something exhausted in his expression. "They never tell the husbands. That's how it works. You fall in love, build a life, start a family, and all the while they're waiting, counting the days until the house calls her back." Then he handed me a folder. Inside were photos, blurry surveillance stills of Aaron from months ago. Hospital records under a different last name. A discharge sheet from a psychiatric facility. And at the bottom, an incident report dated nearly 25 years ago, involving a child found locked in the basement of that same house, unregistered by the foster system, no known relatives, no clear identity. The girl refused to speak for months, but eventually gave a name, Aaron. My hands shook as I flipped through it all. "Why would she lie to me?" I asked. Frank didn't answer right away. He stared out the windshield at nothing, as if replaying a memory too heavy to voice. Then finally he whispered, "Because if you knew the truth you wouldn't have stayed. And the house needs you to stay." That's when he gave me the ultimatum. "You want your son safe? Then walk away. Tonight. Leave the house. Leave her. You don't ask where she went, and you don't go looking. Or," he hesitated just long enough to cut the air like a knife, "you go back. Dig deeper. But if you do, you better be ready to burn everything down, including what little you thought was real." He got out and walked away, leaving the folder on my lap like a coffin lid. I couldn't breathe. Everything I knew about Erin, her past, our marriage, the woman I had raised a child with, was unraveling in pages that felt too official to deny, but too surreal to accept. And yet, what scared me more than the possibility that she had been hiding all of this, was the thought that maybe she didn't remember. Maybe something in that house, in that childhood, had broken her so deeply she'd built an entirely new life just to survive. But now the house had remembered her. I drove home, numb, carrying the weight of that folder like it might bite. When I got inside, Caleb was curled up on the couch, still in his pajamas, watching old family videos on the tablet, ones I didn't remember recording. They showed Aaron, younger, quieter, staring just off camera while Caleb babbled about Legos and dinosaurs. In one clip, she looks directly into the lens and whispers something I couldn't hear over the noise. I paused, rewound, cranked the volume and played it again. "Don't let me go back." That was it. No context. No follow-up. Just that single sentence spoken almost like a prayer. My stomach flipped. I had a choice. I could listen to Frank. Pack up. Drive Caleb far away and never look back. Keep him safe, maybe start over somewhere with new names, a new past, and years of pretending this never happened. Or I could stay. Dig into that basement again. Trace every record, every lie, every shadow until I knew who Aaron really was, even if it destroyed everything. But then a new message came through. No number. Just text. "He's next." No context. No signature. Just those two words. And suddenly the choice wasn't mine anymore. I didn't wait for morning. I locked every door, shoved a suitcase full of clothes into the trunk, strapped Caleb into the back seat half asleep and confused, and drove. I had no plan beyond that, just one overwhelming instinct screaming, "Get out, get out, get out!" But I'd barely made it past the edge of town when the roadblock appeared. No lights. No police. Just two black SUVs parked horizontally across the highway, their hazard blinkers flashing slowly like a pulse. A man in a gray jacket stepped out and motioned for me to stop. I slammed the brakes. My heart punched through my chest. I looked behind me, debating whether to reverse, to swerve, to run, but another SUV slid into place behind us. The man didn't identify himself. He didn't flash a badge. He didn't have to. I knew in my gut, this wasn't official. This was cleanup. He motioned again. I got out. "Mr. Talbot," he said calmly, "this isn't going to go the way you think." I didn't respond. He gestured to Caleb. "The child is important. We're not going to hurt him. But you're making this messy." I took a step forward. "Where's my wife?" He smiled like someone who had already won. "She went home. You tried to stop it. That's admirable. But we both know this isn't about her anymore." That's when it hit me. This wasn't a haunting. It wasn't about ghosts or curses or childhood trauma buried under floorboards. It was an operation. generational, engineered. And somehow my family had been placed at the center of it. They weren't trying to possess Erin. They were activating her. I reached for the folder still sitting on the passenger seat and opened to the psychiatric report, page after page of tests, language comprehension, neurological scans. But one page near the back, one I hadn't noticed before, was stamped with a government seal. A classified header blurred out in multiple places. And the title, Project Eidolon. None of it made sense. But then the man stepped closer and said something I still can't forget. She wasn't meant to make it to adulthood. That wasn't the plan. But the house held on to her long enough for the patterns to stabilize. Now she's compatible again. And your son? He paused like the word tasted wrong. He's showing early signs of inheritance. Inheritance. Not genetics. Programming. I lunged at him, but two other men held me back. I screamed for Caleb to run, to lock the doors, to close his eyes. But by the time I broke free, the man in the gray jacket had already leaned into the window and whispered something to my son, too soft for me to hear. Caleb stared ahead blankly. His lips moved, mouthing something over and over. I opened the door, pulled him out, cradled him against me, but he just kept whispering the same word. Echo. I drove us back to the only place I thought we could hide, Frank's house. But when I got there, the door was already open. Lights on. Coffee still steaming on the table. But Frank was gone. So was his laptop. His files. The folder. The only thing left was a photograph taped to the fridge. An old black and white image of the same house we lived in, but taken decades ago. There was a woman standing on the porch. A child beside her. And in the background, barely visible in the top floor window, another face, one I recognized. My mother. And suddenly it all collapsed in on itself. This wasn't about Erin. Not just her. It wasn't about trauma or lies or conspiracies buried in the walls of a cursed house. It was about me. They'd been watching us both. Erin was a test subject. I was a control. And Caleb? He was the final product. Everything I believed, my marriage, our home, our child's strange dreams, it was all part of a much larger architecture. A bloodline of manipulation. A manufactured family embedded with pre-selected roles, memories, even grief. I had to find Erin. Or what was left of her. But before I could even step outside, Caleb walked into the kitchen holding something in his hand. A note. He didn't say where he found it. But his hands were shaking. The message was written in her handwriting. They erased me once. Don't let them do it again. And that's when the lights cut out. The house was waiting. I don't mean that figuratively. By the time we returned, something about it had changed. The air around it felt compressed, like reality itself had grown dense. The porch light flickered in a slow rhythm that almost felt like breathing. And Caleb, silent in the passenger seat, stared at it like he knew he was walking back into something final. I took his hand. We crossed the threshold together. The moment the door shut behind us, every noise outside disappeared. No wind, no cars, no crickets. Just the hum of electricity beneath the floorboards and a faint sound like a voice calling from inside the walls. I followed it upstairs, down the hallway where we'd heard the tapping. Erin's old childhood room was open again. And this time the mirror was gone. In its place was something worse, rows of screens, machines, and glowing wires drilled into the walls behind her closet. A panel slid aside as I approached, revealing a tunnel no wider than a crawl space, pulsing with dim blue light. Caleb clutched my leg. She's down there, he whispered. We crawled for what felt like miles. The tunnel twisted and dipped, forcing us to slide through water and wiring and old splintered beams. When we finally reached the end, it opened into a chamber. Not dirt. Not stone. But metal, cold, humming, sterile. This was the origin. A buried lab or bunker, hidden beneath the house for decades, humming with energy that didn't belong to anything natural. And standing in the center of it, as calm as the day we met, was Erin. She didn't look up when I said her name. She just stared at a large screen in front of her, filled with looping images, footage of us. Our life together. All of it. Birthdays. Vacations. The day we brought Caleb home. It was all recorded. Then she spoke without turning around. You were never supposed to remember this place. Behind her, someone stepped into the light. The man in the gray jacket. No longer pretending to be an agent. No more measured tone. He looked at me the way an engineer might look at a failing prototype, disappointed but unsurprised. She was never your wife, he said plainly. Not really. She was your mirror. A matching frequency. The reason you both kept dreaming the same dreams. I didn't understand. I didn't want to. I stepped between him and Erin, but she didn't even flinch. You think trauma is personal? She said. It's patterned, it's transferable. They've been running simulations like this for decades, pairing subjects with matching neurological rhythms, placing them in controlled environments, feeding them back fragments of their own past. I stared at her. You're saying we were programmed? She finally looked at me. And for one flicker of a second, her face softened. We were real. That's the cruelest part. We fell in love anyway. Behind me, the man raised a small remote. It's already over, Mr. Talbot. This cycle ends today. But don't worry, we've already started the next one. I lunged before he could press the button. We crashed into the server rack, sparks flying, lights flickering. A piercing frequency screamed through the room. Caleb screamed, holding his ears. Erin fell to her knees. I grabbed the remote and crushed it under my boot, but the systems kept powering up, screen after screen blinking in and out, now displaying new faces, other families, other homes. They weren't just studying us. They were studying thousands. Erin crawled to Caleb and held him, sobbing. He's the first one they can't map, she whispered. They didn't predict him. That's why they're scared. Suddenly the screens went dark. One by one. Until only one remained, showing a live feed of our living room. And standing there facing the camera was me. Except it wasn't a recording. I turned my head slowly, trying to match the movement. But it was milliseconds ahead of me. Anticipating me. Mirroring me in reverse. The man in the gray jacket saw it too. His face dropped. That's not possible, he muttered. Then the feed glitched. And the reflection spoke. *** cycle compromised. Author returned. ***. Author. It wasn't a simulation. It was a loop. Something, or someone, had created this entire system of false lives and mirrored grief to feed off it. And now that it was broken, it wasn't going to reset. The bunker shook violently. Panels blew open. I grabbed Caleb, pulled Erin to her feet, and we ran. Through the tunnels, through the house, through the night. Behind us, the house began to collapse, not physically but dimensionally. It folded inward, room by room, as if it never existed. We made it to the road. But when I looked back, there was no house anymore. Just a clearing. And then Erin said something that chilled me more than anything we'd seen. We were never the first. Before I could respond, Caleb pointed to the woods. There, half hidden in the trees, was another house. Identical to ours. Front door slightly open. Waiting. We didn't go into the second house. Not at first. We stood on the gravel edge of the woods for what felt like hours, breathing in silence, surrounded by nothing but dark trees and the steady tick of cicadas in the heat. Caleb held tight to Erin's hand, and even though my entire body was shaking with exhaustion, adrenaline, and questions I knew I'd never be ready to answer, I couldn't look away from that door. It was cracked open, just slightly, like an invitation. Same chipped white paint. Same old porch light glowing faintly like a heartbeat. Same wind chime dangling just outside the doorway, except this one was still. I don't know what I expected to see inside. Another version of us, another layer of the simulation, some kind of end, but in that moment what stopped me from walking in wasn't fear. It was the realization that maybe, just maybe, we didn't have to. That we'd finally broken the loop. In the weeks that followed, we didn't go back to town. Not even to say goodbye. The highway stretched ahead of us like a lifeline, and we took it, not looking in the rearview mirror. Erin said very little those first few days, only watching Caleb in the back seat like she was afraid to blink. I understood. It wasn't just that our memories had been tampered with or that everything we thought we knew was engineered. What hurt the most was realizing how real it had all still felt. The love, the fear, the heartbreak. None of it was false. Which made it harder. Because if they could fabricate that, what did it say about anything we believed in? But slowly, we began piecing a life together, far from the places and patterns that defined us. We settled in a quiet town near the Rockies where the air was thin and clean, and where no one looked at us twice. Erin took up painting again, something she hadn't done since her college days, and Caleb started preschool, drawing pictures that no longer made us afraid to turn them over. For the first time, his dreams were just dreams. No static. No mirrors. Just stars and animals and impossible rainbow cars. As for me, I kept everything we'd been through in a box, literally and mentally. I wrote it all down, every bizarre detail, and sealed it away in a manila folder I kept beneath the floorboards. Not because I wanted to forget, but because I finally understood that some answers don't serve you until you're strong enough to live with them. Maybe one day Caleb will want to know. Maybe he won't. But when that day comes, I'll be ready. Still, late at night, when the wind is quiet and the trees don't move, I sometimes dream of the clearing. Of that second house in the woods, still waiting with the door ajar. I wake up with the feeling that someone, or something, is watching not out of malice but curiosity. Like the experiment never really ended. Like the author is still there waiting for the next glitch in the cycle, the next deviation, the next spark of unpredictable human emotion that throws everything off course. I've come to believe that's what they were studying all along, not our grief or our love or our fear but our resistance. Our refusal to collapse into programming. Our chaos. So yes, the house is gone. The agents, the tunnels, the mirror, it's all over now. And yet, sometimes when I see Caleb squinting at a cloud or Aaron staring too long into a reflection, I wonder, what if this piece is just another version? Another mask? Another cycle waiting to collapse? But then Caleb runs to me laughing. Aaron kisses my shoulder. The sun breaks through the clouds, warm and real on our skin. And for now that's enough. Because whether the world we're in is real or not, what we feel inside it always is. And maybe that's the only truth we'll ever need.